In the vast, boundless landscape of evolutionary history, the existence of certain lives is itself a tranquil epic of flowing water and moonlight. She possessed a streamlined frame perfectly adapted to marine rhythm, her limbs transformed into flattened, webbed paddles capable of breaking waves freely, and her sharp interlocking teeth should have been a terrifying predatory weapon making ancient fish tremble in the shallows. Yet, in an ancient world governed by brutal natural selection 200 million years ago, she survived as a counterintuitive enigma that captivates modern paleontology. This elegant elf, wandering between shallow seas and shorelines, chose not to close her chapter in a violent marine combat, nor did she leave any ferocious cries in her final moments. Tonight, by the faintly flickering hearth, let us step into his true life with this story that requires no effort to remember. Nothosaurus nono. In the cold entries of fossil taxonomy, this name denotes a medium-sized, semi-aquatic marine reptile that lived on the rim of the ancient Tethys Ocean, a true hermit of the coastline before the dawn of the dinosaur empire. But in the true night of the late Triassic, an era packed with continental drift, awakening volcanoes, and brutal species reshuffling, Nono utilized an ultra-restrained, slow rhythm to become a gentle echo of relaxation. This is not a cold encyclopedia of territorial dominance and bloody plunder, but a midnight resonance of how to shed burdens inside the cocoon of tides and sunsets, finding inner tranquility within the rustling whispers of waves lapping the rocks. 200 million years ago, the ancient European coastline was undergoing an exceptionally long, irreversible ecological metamorphosis. The salty ocean breeze forever filled with the scent of marine algae and sandstone baked by a harsh sun. The waters there were clear to the point of melancholy, sunlight piercing the shallow surface to refract into layers of shifting golden ripples upon the seabed coral reefs. Nono rested quietly upon a reef in these wide shallows, her 4-meter gray body appearing remarkably stable under the shimmering water, like an ancient stone sculpture integrated with the rocks. The first turning point of her destiny was driven by a rare underwater volcanic awakening that swept across the entire Tethys basin, instantly choking the tranquil bay, which had sheltered countless marine lives. With scalding sulfur and volcanic ash, the extreme degradation of their environment plunged the once peaceful semi-aquatic clans into a tightly wound state of territorial contest overnight, their order collapsing entirely under panic and hunger. Larger, ill-tempered relatives fought frantically in the center of the reefs to seize the last remaining clear shallows unpolluted by ash, ripping each other apart as dull collisions mixed with the blunt ache of tearing flesh echoed across the shoreline day after day. Nono watched all of this in silence. She saw her once playmates shatter their scales in mutual slaughter, their beautiful streamlined skin scarred heavily by frantic clawing, their blood staining the tidal flats. As an inward Nothosaurus who resisted conflict, she could have easily utilized her powerful, elongated tail to join that brutal struggle for survival, or even pierced provocateurs' throats with her interlocking teeth, yet there was not a single trace of the era's frenzy in her eyes. They were deep, clear, and carried a touch of otherworldly black serenity. At that moment, a certain wisdom belonging to the water awoke deep within Nono, not the urge to fight, but a profound weariness toward endless plundering and a deliberate choice of self. She did not face the roars of the clan elders filled with jealousy and intimidation, nor did he attempt to contest for a vain throne amidst the chaotic shallows. Instead, on an evening when the heat receded, she flexed her webbed paddles with agonizing slowness. Riding the cool tides rolling in from the open ocean, she moved like a strand of kelp drifting silently. Underwater, walking away from that frantic bay step by step toward the desolate, quiet unknown shore, leaving the shelter of the clan meant Nono had to face the apex predators of the dark night operating on laws of lightning-fast slaughter alone, as well as ancient giant fish from the deep sea prone to raiding the shallows. On an open coastline devoid of complex coral reefs, a single second of oversight or panic meant a semi-aquatic animal needing to switch respiration between land and sea would be ruthlessly erased by the dark. Yet this cruel nature did not plunge Nono into panic. Within her 4-meter streamlined frame flowed a near-detached certainty. She could not learn to thrash frantically through the waves to prove her existence like the predators did. Instead, she chose to carry absolute relaxation into her very marrow. She swam so slowly, with each stroke of her flattened paddles, her elongated body drifted along with the water's inertia for seconds, her smooth belly brushing the fine sand, releasing a dull, drawn-out, and deeply therapeutic rustling sound. Her posture did not resemble an escape, but rather an act of using her body to stroke and perceive every breath and pulse of the ocean. This slowness, ironically, created a beautiful resonance between her and the surrounding night. The long wander accumulated deep, blunt pain in her limb joints, and her elongated neck, burdened by maintaining balance against the currents for so long, constantly radiated a heavy ache of fatigue. Though the sea was cool, by midnight, the chill seeping into her bones felt like countless tiny icy needles, sending a stiff tightness through her muscle fibers. She had to find an absolute sanctuary where both body and soul could anchor completely before her strength vanished entirely. On this cruel wasteland coast, survival wisdom was never determined by physical might, but by who could be the first to find a haven to steady the soul within a crisis-ridden night. Finally, as night fell completely and the plain winds softened, she discovered an exceptionally hidden, flat moonlit beach beneath a narrow sandstone sea cliff. It was a natural harbor accidentally sealed by nature. The towering rock walls blocked the furious monsoons entirely, while the golden sand, having absorbed ample scorching sunlight during the day, now radiated an enchanting, generous warmth. In the shallow documentaries of later generations obsessed with dinosaur battles and marine behemoth combat, the semi-aquatic Nothosaurus is routinely deconstructed as an awkward transitional species, as if lacking the speed of an ichthyosaur or the heavy armor of terrestrial dinosaurs doomed them to be cowardly sacrifices in the meat grinder of fate. Yet this arrogant view completely fails to read the profound wisdom of restraint in Nono's bones. Her streamlined body was not meant to fight for dominance, but served as an invisible psychological wall allowing her to masterfully evade the storms of the era. In her third year of living on this moonlit beach, on a midnight when the tide surged with unusual power, danger inevitably pierced the defense of the sea cliff, descending upon this quiet sanctuary in its coldest form. A massive, prehistoric fish, several times Nono's size, studded with giant teeth and possessing a savage nature, followed the faint trace of life, utilizing the crashing high-tide waves to slip silently to the edge of the beach where she rested. It was a piercing moment where the entire shoreline seemed to freeze. The predator's colossal shadow loomed beneath the shallow water, its heavy breaking of the surface chilling the surrounding air. The ancient cicadas singing in the dark folded their wings instantly, the shrubs fell deathly still, and the moisture in the air seemed to freeze into ice under the carnivore's ravenous gaze. Yet, facing an ambush terrifying enough to shatter the souls of any smaller species, Nono displayed a near-sacred, breathtaking composure. She did not blindly plunge into the deep sea to vent her fear, nor did she crawl frantically across the sand like her kin. Instead, she dropped her center of gravity entirely, grounding her 4-meter body firmly onto the loose sand warmed by the sun. The danger packing the shadows did not shatter her reason. She ceased all movement completely, pressing her head gently against her chest and laying her long tail smoothly along her side, letting the cool wave foam wash over her claws as she transformed into a gray coastal rock devoid of life's warmth. In the occasional flash of moonlight tearing the cloud gaps, her spine, covered in fine scales, reflected a cold, heavy density like granite. This was no food to easily rip apart, but an impassable defense rising abruptly from the shore. The ferocious ancient fish lingered in the shallows a mere few feet from Nono for a full half-hour, churning large clouds of sand with its powerful tail fin, yet it could never find a single gap to strike. Ultimately, under the ruthless retreat of the ebbing tide, it was forced to withdraw step by step into the dark deep sea, carrying away its heavy exhaustion. With the thrilling confrontation dissolved, midnight on the late Triassic coast welcomed its most tender and fated hour. The heavy clouds finally split under the night wind, and a faint, emerald-tinted moonlight filtered from the sky, illuminating the tiny sanctuary where Nono rested and painting the entire beach with a sacred silver edge. What truly brought absolute quiet to this wilderness was the stream of thousands of gentle, delicate, slow-paced tidal ripples rolling in from the distant ocean. As the waves lapped with a near slow-motion flow against the ancient reefs fringing the flat beach, a natural miracle, one that would heal everyone eons later, unfolded on schedule. Tap, tap, sha, sha. It was the sound of the tide weaving through reef crevices and receding slowly across the sand, producing a low, raspy, yet perfectly rhythmic melody. The sound was so faint it resembled 1,000 gentle hands stroking soft satin simultaneously, converging in the boundless night into an endless, low-frequency white noise lullaby rich with ancient texture. This was not merely the sound of the sea, but a natural poem of sleep performed by nature using the temperature of flowing water for all wandering souls in a world packed with existential anxiety. The low-frequency wave notes possessed an irresistible magic, drifting slowly through the air, consuming every shred of residual daytime frustration and survival tension until the vast night returned to infinite peace. Nono completely dropped all defenses, beginning an exquisitely comfortable, deeply immersive pre-sleep heat therapy ritual inside this sanctuary meant for her alone. She adjusted her posture gradually, pressing her heavy, exhausted belly, stiffened from the long wander and the recent confrontation, flat and tight against the loose sand warmed by the sun. At that moment, the residual heat of the dormant volcano, accumulated within the sand all day, began to seep into her like warm spring water along the softer textures of her belly skin. The warmth penetrated her thick subcutaneous tissues, swathed her tense muscle fibers, and rapidly spread to every joint dulled by long travel, dispelling the sticky chill within her body. Next, with a near slow-motion elegance, she laid her long neck smoothly along her side, resting her head softly in a basalt groove rounded perfectly by the ages. Cradled by the whisper of the waves resembling a steady patter of rain, her eyelids grew as heavy as mountains, her consciousness drifted away in the warm embrace, dissolving into a gentle, velvety void. The end of life arrived silently and without a sound. For Nono, it was merely the most peaceful and enchanting evening among countless deeply comfortable nights. It was an ordinary end to a dry season in the late Triassic, the air carrying the subtle bitterness and caramel aroma of drying ancient algae, while thousands of gentle meteors streaked across the dark sky. Nono was too old. Her skeleton had accumulated countless hairline fractures from charging through billows and fighting currents, and every movement of her flattened webbed paddles required enduring a blunt ache deep within her joints. Yet she showed no panic of finality. On that star-filled night, she simply returned to the center of the flat moonlit beach that had accompanied most of her life. Laying down slowly in his most familiar posture, she cradled her tired head gently within the stone groove, allowing her long neck to relax under gravity one last time in the midnight breeze, listening to that decades-long, drawn-out low hum. As the warm gravity of the earth took full custody of her skeleton, a localized sandstone cliff collapse triggered by prolonged waves sent soft, fine red sand pouring smoothly into this harbor. Without fear, and without a single cry, this supreme traveler of coastal relaxation slipped directly from mortal dreams into eternal sleep, tucked inside her favorite sandy bed and cradled by the comforting white noise of waves. Over the next 200 million years, oceans turned into lands. The ancient Tethys Sea underwent countless rifts and reshapes, its once flourishing shallows compressing and rising into the cold inland European strata of today. Yet Nono's body, maintaining that perfect reclining posture and tightly sealed under fine sand and silt, underwent mineralized change, fusing beautifully with the cold stone until every tiny vertebra and trace of webbed limb became an exquisite part of the Earth's skeleton. 200 million years passed like an invisible torrent, washing over every corner of the continent, leveling the ancient woods and transforming the flourishing plains into today's red rock deserts. Enveloped by layers of silt, leaves, and volcanic ash, Amma's graceful body underwent mineralized change. Eventually, every tiny vertebra and trace of long spikes fused perfectly with the cold stone, becoming part of the Earth's own skeleton. Because he died in absolute peace, undisturbed by predators, when the joint archaeological team gently brushed away the last layer of red soil 100 million years later, every scholar present was stunned by the breathtaking completeness of the remains. It was flawlessly preserved. The slender skull and unique twin spine rows were crystal clear, the back still maintaining that healing posture of relaxing in the wind, perfect as a gray deity that had just fallen asleep at midnight. The world marveled in scientific papers at the milestone significance of this fossil in evolutionary history, defining his existence with professional terms and analyzing his structural weight-bearing limits. Yet few could pierce through those cold academic names to see the Cretaceous night, filled with low-frequency white noise, that had once comforted Amma's entire life. True strength never needs to prove itself through roars and slaughter, it is always contained within the deepest quiet and self-restraint, much like this long lullaby Amma wrote with his entire life. Now, you too might be lying in a sanctuary of your own, free from the storms of the Cretaceous and the worldly chaos that brings you tension and anxiety. Those daytime trivialities that left you exhausted and perplexed are, before the boundless river of time, nothing more than an insignificant grain of sand in the wilderness, not worth sacrificing your sleep for. The earth will cradle your tired body with the gentlest gravity and endless night, just as it accepted Amma tens of millions of years ago, washing away all your unease and tension. Your bed radiates a pleasant warmth, and your soft duvet offers the coziest embrace, mirroring that warm soil and quiet night wind that safely covered Amma eons ago. Drop all defenses and weight from your heart, listen to this story that requires no effort to remember, and let your slow, deep, and measured breathing carry you away. Slowly, close your eyes. Good night, Nono the Nothosaurus, good night, to every soul shedding its heavy armor tonight, returning to an inner mountain-like peace.